Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Okay, everyone, welcome to Game Over Toronto. I'm your host, Rahef. Absolutely no preamble today. I'm just going to get into it. My host tonight is Arvi. You may know him, sorry, Arvin from Twitter. You may know him on Twitter, and he also at pensionpuppets.com. Yeah, man, let's just get into that loss. But right before we do, sports betting, it's on everyone's mind right now, and Sports Interaction is Canada's sportsbook. Before the game starts, live and play, or how your favorite player will perform, Canada plays at SIA, doing it right since 1997. With the most competitive odds, Sports Interaction makes it deposit, play, and cash out. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDP. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDP. Remember, 19 plus, and please play responsibly. And welcome my guest. Hello, Arvin. What a game,
Hey,
huh?
yeah, that was something.
That was probably one of the worst Leaf playoff losses I've seen, just in terms of how quickly they were absolutely out of it in that game.
I don't. It has a lot of competition for worst Leafs
Actually,
playoff
that is
losses.
true. This is the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. I mean, it's. I think the first useful thing to do, because we're going to be talking very negatively about the Leafs in this, because there was really nothing redemptive about this performance. The first thing to do is to realize, okay, the sky isn't falling. It's 2-2 in a series. It doesn't matter how bad you lose any individual game. It's still just one game, right? It's 2-2 in a
Here's our
series. The
half
Leafs have
our
home ice
half glass
advantage.
full. A little bit of half glass full to start this
Yeah,
mostly negative recap, everyone.
right. So, like, if the 1,000-foot view is 2-2 series. It's the best of three. Leafs have home ice, right? That's not the worst situation to be in. It's not an amazing situation to be in, right? It could be much better. Leafs could be up 3-1. We saw last year that's not infallible, but you'd certainly rather be up 3-1 than tied 2-2. Um, but yeah, putting that aside, like putting aside that we should not be entirely doom and gloom about the series. If we're just focusing on this game sucked. This game was awful.
Yeah, I mean that the biggest thing I think is that it wasn't just that the Leafs went down in the first minute of the game. It was that they were just, you know, the game was essentially over after 10 minutes. There was, they're down 3-0. It was just absolutely, it's not even just they're down 3-0. They were getting outclassed by Tampa in the first period in that game. At one point, the Leafs had two shot attempts to Tampa's, I believe, 17, which is just, they did not touch the puck for the first 15 minutes of that game.
Yeah, I think that's really where any analysis has to start and almost end, because, as you said, it ceased to be a competitive game after 3-0. Like, at that point, the Leafs did start to play a little bit in Tampa's zone, but you're down 3-0. Who cares? Right? Like, as you said, the competitive portion of the game is effectively over. And the reality is the Leafs, we hate the whole, like, when Mike Babcock said this, it became a meme of like starting on time. Well, the Leafs didn't do it. And you have to credit Tampa to some extent for that, to a significant extent for that, right? They were very, very aggressive on the forecheck early on. They were very active in cutting off space for the Leafs centers in particular. Whenever the Leafs could get out of the zone with the puck, they were usually forced to the flanks, and then Tampa could basically corner off the wingers and give them very few options. Their puck retrievals were excellent. The Leafs didn't look remotely prepared for it.
Oh, it led
And,
to so many turnovers on the part in the defense.
it did. And it's not like, if you replay those first 10, 15 minutes and it goes exactly the same way. So Tampa plays really well, the Leafs played really terrible. In most of those situations, the Leafs don't come out of that down 3-0. It may be like 1-0 or 2-0 in some of those situations. But the Lightning put themselves in a situation where a few good bounces would essentially end the game early, and they capitalized on that perfectly. And that led to a situation where, yeah, the Leafs win probability was probably within less than 10%, 10 minutes in.
And it's like, okay, you sit down and you want to analyze this game. You look at the stats, you look at all of it put together, and it's so difficult because, as we've said, the Leafs were essentially out of it within the first 10 minutes. So, you want to look at the rest of the game, and it's so difficult to talk about a game where the Leafs are down 5-0 for more than half of it. I mean, halfway through the second, they're down 5-0. Like
This
how
has been
much
true of the series in general. So little of the time in the series has been spent with the teams like close. It's been blowouts one way or the other.
that's so true. It makes it so difficult. And uh, to that point, the degree of the game that's been being played on the special teams as well makes it incredibly
Yeah,
difficult
the
to
Leafs took what,
analyze.
another 7 or 8 penalties
Yeah.
today?
So they took 8 I wrote this down because I was frankly amazed. I wanted to see like what the spread has been for both teams. But the Leafs 8 penalties in this game. Tampa scored 1 power play goal. Um in total, the Leafs have taken 23 penalties throughout this series. I mean, for a team like the Leafs, which throughout the season, they're one of the least penalized teams in the league, to come into a series and take this many penalties, it's I mean, we know that Tampa in the regular season are power play and penalty. They are a team that takes a lot of penalties and gets a lot of power plays. And it seems like the Leafs are kind of playing into Tampa's strategy and own, which is kind of keep the games low on the penalty side.
Yeah, Tampa is very, very good at doing that. And I think everyone kind of knew they'd try and do that. And so far, they've been very successful in transitioning the game away from 5-on-5. I think Washington is a team that does this a lot as well.
And
And it's had mixed results in some ways. Like the Leafs won the special teams battle in game one. They won the special teams battle in game three, especially if you count that post penalty goal by Blackwell in game three.
right.
So it hasn't been like completely, faultless for Tampa Bay, but in games 2 and 4, yeah, like it's very hard to mount a comeback from the penalty box.
That's true. Actually, it's funny you talk about kind of the Leafs, both their wins coming at through the special team.
At least in part, yeah.
At least in part. And that kind of leads me to something I think that's a big storyline throughout the first 4 games, especially when it comes to their big four of Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander, which is just that they've kind of been MIA 5-on-5, and it's been a problem, especially in games 3 and 4. Yes, Matthews, Marner, game 1 they played great. Matthews gets a couple of goals. In game 2, Matthews, Marner, Bunting have that one really great shift that ends up with a goal. After that, game 3 and 4, the Matthews line has effectively been shut down by the Color. They've had absolutely. Matthews and Marner are currently sitting out. Yes, the Hedman pairing as well. They've been so excellent against them. And something to note, actually, is just that the usage of the Matthews line throughout this series, I mean, Matthews has gotten 92% of his zone starts in the offensive zone. So it's, Keefe is really trying to get him dips in the offensive zone, and it's just working for Matthews. Sitting at a 40% out of 10 percentage. I mean, what is the solution when the big four that you're kind of paying to win you basically the first round, you kind of live and die by your stars, are once again just MIA?
Yeah, frankly, I don't think there is one, right? The Leafs as a team are built on this concept of 4 elite forwards, and the primes don't totally line up in a sense, right? Matthews wasn't at his best when Tavares is at his best. Now that Matthews is in his prime, we've seen Tavares take a bit of a step back and things like that. But the fundamental idea is, for more than half the game, for like 2/3 of the game, we can put out 2 lines that are first lines on a huge portion of the NHL. And more than that, this year, what the Leafs established in the regular season is that one line in particular, Matthews, Marner, and Bunting, but it should be Matthews, Marner, whoever, is arguably the best line in the league. That's what the Leafs' regular season success was built on. They were dependent on that line, and that's not, a bad thing. They're paying a lot of money to these 2 guys. It's okay to depend on them. But that also means you don't have a huge margin for error when they aren't playing at their best. And we also shouldn't deny agency from Tampa Bay here. They're doing a good job to shut them down. Like, as you said, Killorn is doing a great job. Hedman's doing a great job. In the time that Cirelli and Point have been matched up against that line, they've done a great job. It's to Tampa's credit. But fundamentally, if you're a team built around 2 top lines and those top lines are not performing like top lines, then your team identity crumbles like a house of cards. And that's the situation that the Leafs find themselves in. And, you can look at this in an optimistic way, which is like, okay, the Leafs have gotten nothing from these guys at 5-on-5 for 4 games, and they're tied. right?
Right.
And that's sort of that we went to this. If you told me, at the start of the series, Big Four getting nothing from them 5-on-5, absolutely nothing. And what's the score after game 4? I'd say probably 3-1 Tampa.
Right.
So it's fortunate in that regard. But the downside is, okay, it's tied 2-2. We need to win 2 more games against these guys. We probably can't rely on 2 more two more David Kampf strikes.
And, we saw that tonight. We maybe can't rely on Jack Campbell to kind of win you the goaltending battle every night, at least without.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the game 3 performance by Campbell was he outperformed Vasilevsky. And again, that's something we probably couldn't expect going in because everyone would suggest Vasilevsky is a better goaltender than Campbell. I don't think that's controversial at all.
No. And I mean, that's a huge. We saw this also against Montreal. It was a big storyline again that, the Matthews line was kind of shut down. They're playing against noted, I don't know, he's doing it again in the playoffs, I believe, but Philip Deneau absolutely shut down the Matthews line playoffs against Montreal. And, the Leafs.
That happened more in like games 6 and 7 in particular, right? Because Matthews he hit like 3 posts in that series. Like he was still dangerous to the eye.
Yeah, that's
this
true.
has been, I think, more comprehensive a shutdown in a very uninspiring way if you're a Leafs fan.
Yeah, you're seeing Matthews kind of fumble on plays that you would not see him do during the regular season. The pucks are kind of bouncing over his stick. He's so good at controlling the puck, whether it be in the offensive zone or the defensive zone. And that's just not happening for him. Kind of really notice it on the power play, I think. It's difficult to win against a team like Tampa when your best players are not your best players, because as we've said, you really can't expect Ilya Lyubushkin to pass to create like offensive chances and pass to David Kampf every game. It's just not going to happen, and it's not a realistic expectation. I mean, it's really nice when you get depth scoring, but that needs to kind of be the supplement to stars coming through.
Yeah, I agree completely. As I said, the Leafs are a team built around stars. If the stars are the foundation, and if the foundation is, not strong, well, everything's going to come tumbling down, and that's just the reality of it.
So, I mean, like, you're Sheldon Keefe. You have not really a couple of options, but I would say one big option, like kind of staring you in the face, is to maybe switch Marner and Nylander. But I'm also just so reluctant to do that because the Matthews line with Marner was just fantastic during arguably the best line in hockey. And you really want to split that up. I mean, yes, they're being incredibly kind of shut down right now and they're not really generating much, but I don't know if I want to do that either.
I'm not sure either. I think you could argue for it either way. It would have been interesting to see it a little in this game, especially once it became a lost cause. It represented, a blowout game in the playoffs kind of represents a bit of natural time for experimentation, which you don't really get very often.
Great point.
But regardless, they didn't really take advantage of that. And it's arguable how much they would have gleaned from it because there was so much penalty time through the second and third period that you wouldn't have had like really extended runs of Matthews and Nylander together 5-on-5 and Tavares Marner. If I'm Keefe, I lean towards not changing it up. Perhaps I'm relying too heavily on the example, but I think fundamentally you have to trust your guys. They brought you here, right? You dance with the people who brought you here. So I think that's what they roll with.
Yeah, and something to note: the Leafs are going back to Toronto. 5. Keefe will be able to kind of get the Matthews line away from Hedman, away from kind of get them a more favorable matchup at home. We'll see if maybe that is something that kind of breaks that line out of the funk that they're currently in. Another story I kind of wanted to talk about is just the defense, specifically two separate pairings. One, I wanted to talk about Muzzin and Brody, who I think have actually been two of the Leafs' best players in this series. Muzzin maybe getting, he gets that goal today, kind of toward garbage time with the score, kind of essentially really out of reach for the Leafs. He's kind of been getting a little bit more of the credit, but Brody, I think, has also been, and I think that the best defense.
Considering the jobs that they have to do taking on tough matchups, because the people who we're probably going to talk about next are not.
Yeah.
they've done a pretty admirable job. I think a lot of people were understandably concerned about Jake Muzzin this year, who, as we all know, didn't have the best year, struggled with injury, struggled with keeping the puck out of his own net when he was on the ice. Some of that was PDO and on-ice save percentage. You look at his shot numbers and his expected goals numbers, they're still quite good. But still didn't look like the Jake Muzzin we had expected and grown accustomed to over the past few years, who was, a borderline top pairing guy when you looked at how well he drove play and the types of minutes that he played. They've not been the problem, really, the Brody Muzzin pairing, at least not to my eye. I mean, I don't think they were good today. No one was good today, right? Like, we can be clear about that. There wasn't a single Leaf who I could say was like inarguably good today.
Yeah, they were on, I believe, for 1 5-on-5 goal against, but their numbers were mostly sound.
Yeah, Brody took at least one penalty today, but who didn't?
Yeah, I mean, half the team took a penalty. Yeah. Jake Muzzin has clearly stepped up his game playoffs, which is good to see. They're basically mainly getting, as you said, the hard matchups, mainly all the defensive zone starts, because the pairing that is decidedly not is the Riley-Lyubushkin pairing, which has been really, they've just been really bad, I think. Lyubushkin particularly has, I think, been.
The book on Lyubushkin was that he was strong defensively and not awesome with the puck on his stick. In that sense, he's been as advertised, notwithstanding that really impressive Marner-like play to Blackwell in Game 3. But yeah, it's kind of, you're sort of expecting, that's sort of what you expect out of him. The pairing with Riley made some theoretical sense because they can compensate for each other's weaknesses, but at the same time, it hasn't really worked out that way, at least in this series. Riley's defensive weaknesses have sort of been compounded with Lyubushkin's inability to exit the zone. And I think Tampa's really trying to target and make Lyubushkin make plays with the puck on his stick, and often he's not able to. And that's in no small part a contributor to the bad numbers from the Matthews line, because Matthews and Riley spent a lot of time together on the ice, which makes sense. That's something Keefe did a lot in the regular season. It makes sense. Have your best offensive defenseman play with your best offensive line.
Yeah. I'm going to say something maybe a little bit controversial. Is Ilya Lyubushkin a more physical Cody Ceci? In that he cannot play with the puck. The puck is on his stick.
It's not an insane take. Yeah, I mean, I think they play a little bit differently. Ceci was so unaware of the play. I think that's what made Ceci the most frustrating player in the world to watch, because he has so many tools, and it's just he does not process the game fast enough to play at high NHL levels. Whereas Lyubushkin feels possibly more limited in what he can do, but has a better understanding of the game.
Yeah.
But in terms of net effect, Riley Lyubushkin is not exactly going in. It's not exactly Cabernet McCabe.
Yeah, and I mean the issue is the other right-handed defenseman they want to put with Riley is Hall, and he's not been great either. I think
he's been awful. I mean, I think he's been a little. I think Hall actually had a quietly decent year. He got PDO'd as well, especially with Muzzin. But his pairing with Brody, I think, had really good numbers throughout the year. And I don't have a strong opinion on him versus Liljegren, but I also don't think that choice is making the difference between the Leafs winning and losing, especially not in a game like this.
No. Although I do think I'm wrong, but was it not he failed to get the puck out of the zone 3 times first shift
on the first
game with the goal going
in?
I
agree. So I agree, but that's also something that, as we said, the first 10 minutes, every Leaf was failing to do that, and his happened to be the time where they scored. Right? If they just scored on a different shift, we'd be yelling at Lyubushkin, or we'd be yelling at Riley, or we'd be yelling at Brody. Everyone messed up.
Yeah, I think a lot of the fan base also is kind of just hating on Hall these days. I wasn't too sold on Lyubushkin over Hall. I know I said that, I think, on the 82nd first episode of Game Over that I did, that I wasn't sure if Lyubushkin over Hall for Game 1 is maybe the best idea, because I wasn't necessarily that sold on Lyubushkin to begin with. But yeah, I do think Hall is kind of getting maybe a little bit unfairly hated on days.
I think it's pretty common for and pretty comfortable for fans to just place a disproportionate amount of blame on fourth line forwards and third pairing defensemen, or like lower end defenseman. Hall is kind of the Leafs have a weird system where they have three almost even pairs in terms of ice time because they have such a flat defensive structure. But yeah, I think people overrate the importance of those players at times. Like as we said, and if someone's going to take any analysis from this game away, it's the Stars. The Stars are by far huge, by orders of magnitude, the most important players on this team. And Liljegren versus Hall is probably not making the difference between us winning and losing the series, but Matthews playing at a B plus level versus a C plus level very well could be.
Yeah, and I think it really boils down to that. To me, that is the storyline. You can also say something about maybe. I mean, we did talk about how in game special teams help them, but I think it's also a storyline that in games 2 and 4, the Leafs specialty team helped them lose. Game 2, the Leafs had a couple of opportunities first period, 3 power plays that they didn't capitalize on, and it kind of led to Lightning getting their chances. And tonight something similar, can't capitalize on their chances, and then they give Tampa 8 of their own.
Mm-hmm. Something that I think is worth noting with Tampa's power play, and I wish I had better numbers to back this up because it's a very eye-testy observation, but Tampa's power play being built around kind of the dual threat of Kucherov's shot and Stamkos's shot, with Kucherov generally operating at the half wall. Those are easy shots to get into. Like once they're set up, you really can't stop them from getting one of those two shots, right? You can make it harder. You take away the cross ice pass from Kucherov to Stamkos or vice versa. But like if Hedman tees one of those two up, you can't do a lot to stop it just because they have one more guy than you. And those aren't amazing shots on the power play, but they're like really good fail safes. Because like even if their power play isn't clicking, as long as they get set up, they're going to get something that's somewhat dangerous. The Leafs, in theory, have that, especially with Matthews taking shots, but a lot of the Leafs' offense on the power play comes from sort of these intricate passing plays. And in the playoffs, those passing lanes are like a little bit tighter and the pressure's a little bit clearly aren't. And I think, those, it maybe reduces the margin for error and reduces the gap in the two power plays because of how, because of, I guess, maybe the difference in playoff hockey. Now, this is a totally unsupported theory of mine. It's just a theory, but it's something I've been thinking about for a while. And I think, power plays that are sort of easy to get into and still reasonably effective have some benefit because to make an NBA comparison, it's like having a player who can just easily walk into a mid-range jumper whenever they want and hit it at a pretty good rate. You don't want to build your offense out of that, but sometimes oh, okay, sorry.
That was me. But to your point, I 100% agree. And like you said, I think it was kind of evident on one of the power plays where they were maybe overpassing. And it's like when you have that Stamkos and Kucherov option there, it's very difficult to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm seeing a comment in the chat also about the backup about Shalgren. I mean, I thought Shalgren was fine, but it also doesn't matter. He could have let in 45 goals. It would not, like, if we're playing Shalgren in any meaningful minutes where there's like, actual games at stake and the game is not already won or lost, then we are like kind of screwed, frankly. So it doesn't matter how Shalgren does, honestly. I thought he was fine, but the backup goalie, if we're playing him, we're in a really, really bad spot anyways, and I'm not sure it matters.
Yeah, and if you're playing your backup goalie in the playoffs, something catastrophic has happened. So we'll just
especially when Vasilevsky's on the other end, right? It'll. I think Shalgren's a perfectly fine NHL backup, like a backup third goaltender type. But yeah, we clearly don't have the goaltending advantage.
Yeah. So I guess to just kind of close this off for today, glass half full. Let's be a little positive to kind of end the stream today.
Mhm.
The Leafs are going into Game 5. It's tied 2-2. I think if you told any of us at the beginning of the series that that was going to happen, most of us would kind of not be surprised. Um, I don't think anybody expected this to be a blowout in either direction, sweep, or maybe 5-1. So I'm not necessarily surprised. I think the key for the Leafs really is they need to get their stars on the board, and then it needs to be kind of early. Game 5. Get Matthews engaged. I think Keefe needs to get the matchup favorable for that line. And I think they're just going to win and die by their big four. And I think you can kind of just boil it down to that.
I would agree with that. As you said, boils down to Matthews and Marner being able to consistently dominate, zone time and shots, and to a lesser extent, Tavares and Leonard need to do that too. But there is a higher standard for Matthews and Marner. So if they're able to do that, the Leafs will be in good shape. If they're not, then the Leafs have to kind of pray for a little extra luck on the side.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say? By the way, people watching, if this stream kind of shuts down randomly, I'm having a problem with Zoom, so if that happens, I'm really sorry. But anything else you want to say, Armin, before we kind of close out tonight?
No, I think that just about covers it. I mean, I think the less said about that game, the better.
Very true. Where can people find you?
You can find my stuff at pensionplanpuppets.com, and I do a podcast with Acting the Foolman called Back to Excited, which is also on there and on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, wherever.
Okay. It cut out. Okay, I think he's gonna... I'll just finish it off for him. Basically, you can find him at where he said. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As Arvin said, the less we say about that game, kind of the better. Hopefully, the Leafs can manage to win one for me the next time I do a recap. I'm getting kind of tired of talking about a loss. So, yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in, and hopefully the Leafs can kick some ass in Game 5. Go up 3-2.